Hey everybody, Charles here. This week's episode is titled Friends in Low Places, and we'll be covering Rule 3 from Jordan Peterson's book 12 Rules for Life. Rule 3 says, make friends with people who want the best for you. This is our second attempt at covering Rule 3 in a podcast episode. We weren't completely pleased with the first one, so we decided to give it another go, and we both hope you enjoy. Thanks, and please send any feedback to mindfullymasculine@gmail.com. Welcome to the Mindfully Masculine podcast with Charles and Dan, where we take a conscious, holistic, and direct approach to relationships, mental health, and self-improvement. For additional content, visit our website at mindfullymasculine.com. And to interact with us, our guests, and your fellow listeners, join the Mindfully Masculine group on Facebook.
Good morning, Charles. Take two.
Good morning, Dan. Welcome to rule number 3.1.
Oh, no. Don't associate this with Windows 3.1. Well, I guess that was the good one. 3.1 was okay, right?
Yeah. Oh, God, we're so old. Yeah, Windows 3.1 was not bad. If I had a nickel for every time that I had to install MS-DOS 6 and then put Windows 3.1 on top of
That's
it,
right.
I would be a rich man.
Yeah, I remember doing that on my mom's computer a couple of times.
What did you use? 3.5-inch floppies or 5 1/4s?
They were 3.5s, I think. No, the first ones must have been 5 1/4. Because we had before that we had a word processor.
Okay.
Yeah. AST was the name of the company that made the word processor. My mom was so excited she got it for us for Christmas one year under the tree, and I was excited for it too. I was like, oh my gosh, a digital screen, because I actually used a regular typewriter to type up stuff for school when I was a kid, and I remember using whiteout and having to, like, when you messed up, I mean, talk about building like a OCD around being perfect. because you had to, if you messed up that thing,
there was a cost.
Pressure was on. There was time and effort, and oh boy, yeah. So talk about moving slowly. That's what we need to fix the world: is bring typewriters back.
Ugh.
Replace computers, phones with typewriters.
Replace phones with typewriters. That'd be interesting to see. Instead of hanging out at Mathers, just playing on my phone when I'm waiting for my friends to show up, I just pull out a typewriter and start typing up some letters.
Well, you like to stand out. That would definitely make you stand out.
Not that way. Not that much.
No.
No. So not only in ways that it inconveniences other people, not ways that it inconveniences myself.
I see.
Yeah,
I see the method of the madness now.
Okay, so we recorded this episode once on February 25th, and today is March 18th. We'll be releasing this on Monday. What's the date on Monday? The 21st. And I started listening to the episode yesterday in preparation for editing it so that it could go out on Monday. And I was like, oh, this is terrible. We can't put this out there. Me and you were hitting our filler words way too much. I mean, I'm not great when it comes to those filler words, but this episode was particularly brutal. I think I texted you yesterday saying the number of knows that I'm hearing coming out of both of our mouths is making me suicidal. It was so bad. I felt so uncomfortable and like, and I know you don't like to re-record I will re-record an episode at the drop of a hat because I don't value my time nearly as much as you value yours. But I was listening to it and I was like, I don't know if I want to tell Dan that we have to do it over, but I really don't like it. So thanks for being cool. And you were actually the one that suggested that we re-record it. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. I mean, filler words makes things difficult to filter through and get the actual content. And I know I'm more guilty of it than you are, for sure. You have a lot of great experience from doing some stand-up and public speaking, and I have less of that. So I can only imagine that you were being kind to me, and I was probably the one that had more of the filler words than you did. But regardless, as we're talking about rule 3 here in terms of making friends with people who want the best for you, that's what I wanted, for you. It's what I wanted for us, for the podcast, and for the people listening to it. I certainly don't want to make any of them suicidal.
Right. Yeah, that is not the goal. Yeah, I mean, in all honesty, I would say I was probably at a 7 and you were at an 8. So we were pretty close in how terrible we are. You might have been a little bit worse than me, but
Most
even
likely.
if I was at a 7 and you were at a 3 or a 4, I still would have been like, I don't want to do this. This is not good enough.
Yeah. Yeah. No, hey, listen, that's fine.
But some of the high points from that failed recording, I took a COVID test while we were recording because my Whoop band told me that my all my stats that could indicate I had COVID were in the red, and so I took a test on the air, and it was negative. So big deal. I mean, we're not really missing much by not having that. I could take a negative test right now if people find that entertaining. But,
right, but you weren't feeling up to snuff, and it's
no, actually, I was feeling good. That was the one I was feeling good for. And then like a week later is when I actually got sick for 24 hours. But when Whoop was telling me I was sick, I was feeling 100%. I could not understand where it was coming up with this nonsense.
Interesting.
And then I woke up the next day and everything was fine. So no idea what was going on.
Is it possible that it moved to a different position on your arm?
Highly possible.
Okay.
Yes.
Right.
I fiddle with it when I'm sleeping at night. I adjust it and touch it unconsciously all the time. So
what I found is I need to make mine a little bit tighter than a Fitbit. And it actually leaves like a little indentation in my skin in order for it to really stay where it needs to stay. So it's very snug. At least
really?
that was what I had learned from putting it on initially.
That's a hard ask for me. I mean, I keep my Fitbit on and my Whoop on when I sleep, and for the most part, they don't bother me.
Yeah,
I would say the Whoop bothers me more than the Fitbit. The Fitbit is just kind of there, and the Whoop. Sometimes I'll wake up, and because of the way the band works, like sometimes the sensor will be like flipped up and not in the band anymore. So it's definitely on the loose side.
So then, I think mine doesn't do that. So here you can see my beautiful rose gold version of it. But
very fancy.
It shouldn't be flipping up. Obviously, you need to be a little bit tighter, or you need to move it up on your arm a little bit more. And I think I feel it a little bit less if it's a little further up on my wrist.
Okay, I will keep that in mind when I don't have it on right now because I'm going to jump in the shower as soon as we're done. I've got to go see my doctor and pick up a script from him, and then my kitty cuddler orientation with Pet Alliance is today. I thought it was last Friday, so you all may hear a reference to that on a future episode. And I went on the wrong day. I was a week early. I showed up a week too early for my.
Wait a minute, you went all the way down there?
Oh yeah, I went all the way there. I'm like looking around for where is this thing? I expected to see some people here, and nobody there really knew what was going on. And they found somebody, and they're like, "That's next week." I was like, "Oh, all right. Well, thanks."
Oh, that's really funny. I thought you had just kind of looked at your calendar and realized it on your own. I didn't know you went all the way down there and had to face humiliation in front of everybody that you're going to need to work with.
Oh, please. I'll do way worse stuff than this. I mean, this will pale in comparison to when I start baby talking the kittens, big deal.
Yeah.
Let's see. Oh, so you and I went out for St. Patty's Day last night, sort of.
If you call leaving the house going out, yes.
Yeah. So I got to your house, and
I'm still celebrating, by the way. You can tell with my green V-neck. So
okay. Yeah. Well, that makes one of us. I've already thrown my St. Patrick's Day t-shirt in the garbage because I don't keep holiday shirts around. It's like I buy cheap ones, I wear them, and then I either donate them or throw them in the garbage. But when it's something that specific and that, right, it's either going to sit at Goodwill till next St. Patrick's Day, or I threw it away. So that might make me a terrible person.
So you need. So basically, you're saying you need fresh expressions or fresh outfits for every St. Patrick's Day every year.
For every holiday. Are you kidding me? I'm not wearing the same novelty t-shirt for every Halloween, every St. Patrick's Day, every Valentine's Day. Absolutely not. I mean,
because people are going to remember exactly what you wore.
Yeah, I'm like a starlet going to the Oscars. I can't show up in the same dress twice.
Oh,
what are you talking about?
Yeah. Great point. Great analogy. Just like them.
Okay, so so we finally did leave your house. We agreed before we left the house, like, I don't really feel like doing this, Dan, do you? And you're like, not really. I was like, all right, cool, great. Nothing I love more than canceled plans.
Yeah.
So then
we've got busy plans for this weekend, and it's all about moderation. I didn't want to push the envelope with too much drinking, so.
Yeah, and part of the concerns we both had was St. Patrick's Day crowds, and even though you're not clean and sobes like me, you weren't planning on getting completely trashed last night.
No.
And there were going to be a lot of people there that had that exact plan, and so being around people that have that agenda when you don't have that agenda, it can, especially when it's a huge crowd of just people getting hammered when you're not, that can be really anxiety inducing and brings out the judgmental, haughty part of me, I would say.
Sure.
And so I think, as long as I'm not drinking, which I have no plans to start back up again, St. Patrick's Day and Cinco de Mayo, for that matter, may not be the holidays for me.
No, I mean, I was a little bit more excited to see the band with a very cute name of Def Leprechaun, and it sounded like it was a Def Leppard tribute band. So that would have been bring me back to my youth a little bit. Would have been
Def
nice
Leppard.
To see, so
Def Leppard is just a couple years before I got into music, so. While I can recognize.
So when are you planning on getting into music now?
I mean, as a kid, I was.
So you're thinking you already are into music? Oh,
yeah. I like listening to music.
You, really?
I like listening to music, like not live. I'm talking like on the radio, on MTV, stuff like that. When I was a kid, I was into that.
Okay,
and am into that. I still listen to music.
Volume set down to 2.
Yeah. Volume's fairly low.
Not too loud.
Not too loud.
Not too rambunctious.
I mean, what if I have to start talking to my cat? I don't want him to not be able to hear me, so I can't listen to it too loud.
Right. Especially with that high pitched baby talk. Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
So so Def Leppard was.
I've heard you talk to the cows.
There you go. Yes,
on your Instagram.
I do love going.
You do turn into a little kid with those cows.
I really
it's
do.
Hysterical.
It's all animals.
Yeah.
It's all animals. Yeah. I am such a baby.
I'm like, who is this person? Oh
I know. It's the I get very sweet around animals and not around many people.
I'm just gonna need you to bring like a baby goat whenever we go out somewhere. Just
I support that 100%.
Keep you sweet, even if you're listening to a crappy cover band.
You're joking, but that would totally work.
It's your therapy goat.
The only thing is I'd feel bad for the goat having to listen to that loud, crappy music. I'd be like, me and the goat are going outside. You guys enjoy the concert. Oh God damn, that sounds amazing. You have no idea how excited I am for this thing that will never happen. I mean, I'm even thinking, maybe Dan could get a foster dog and we could take that to some sort of an event, and me and the dog could hang out outside while you're there enjoying the music. That would be amazing.
Yeah. I might end up with one. We'll see how that happens.
I hope they open that back up. That would be great.
Yes,
that would be spectacular.
Yeah.
The Pet Alliance where we live has a program where you can basically take a dog out on a date and take it for a walk, take it to the dog park, take it to a dog friendly bar or restaurant, and they closed it down, I think, because of COVID, right?
That's what I remember. Yeah. But it's I mean, and then part of Pet Alliance burned down, and that was that was a big thing, right? Fortunately, they got more than enough money in terms of what they were asking for. It was like 2 or 3 times the amount, which was great that they raised. So, time to put my blood, sweat, and tears into supporting them as well, not just my money.
Awesome. I look forward to maybe you and I can hang out at the shelter sometimes. You can deal with the dogs and I'll deal with the cats.
Yeah, hopefully not too much.
Since you're allergic to the cats.
Yeah. So the sweat and tears will be there. Hopefully it won't be much blood. So
you're right. That's true. Yeah. I imagine the dogs they keep around are pretty chill, so we should be okay. Although they might
fingers crossed. They
big dogs
socialization.
They can get a little scratchy when they're happy to see you. So that's something to watch out for
sure.
Okay, so another thing I want to talk about is on Wednesday, you and I had a little bit of tension in our friendship that I'm excited to share because I think it came out as good as it could, meaning I wasn't a complete prick about it, so it went great.
No, you handled it pretty well. You handled the disappointment very well, I
Yeah.
thought.
So I asked you for a favor on Wednesday, and you had like 3 really good reasons to say no, and the only one that matters is you didn't want to do it, and that really, I mean, is the only one that matters. I was not entitled to get this favor from you. I didn't have this favor coming. I wasn't asking you to pay me back for something I did. I was just like, hey Dan, can you do this for me? And you're like, nope, it's not going to work out. And my initial impulse was, wait, what? This isn't the way the world's supposed to work.
Well, and it's also not usually the way I work, because I'm very much a yes man. And that's something I've been working through. It's something, from No More Mr. Nice Guy, also here with 12 Rules.
Yeah.
The importance of setting boundaries and I can set boundaries all day long, but upholding them is the challenge for me, at least. And saying no is tough for me, especially for people that I like. And then, even you. So
people you like and me.
Yeah. So, it was extra tough.
Yeah. So, could you tell, I mean, we were just on the phone, so we weren't doing a video call or anything, but, could you feel my attitude change? And were you worried I was going to get sour about it?
I definitely heard your attitude. I heard your attitude change, and visually I could see you getting red about it. In my mind, I could see, because we hang out so much and I see you. Yeah. So, I definitely, you are very transparent, which is, I think, is a good thing in terms of expressing your emotions whenever you're feeling one thing or another. You don't hide it very well, and that's fine. So I could tell. It's not like I needed to be, Kreskin to,
I would say, especially when it comes to frustration or disappointment. Yeah, those are very. Yeah, those are tough for me to hide,
especially when you were super excited. You came from a very super excited state too.
Yeah,
about you're very excited about this, and so I had a little bit of a challenge to I knew you were not going to be happy about it, and when you're so excited about it. So it wasn't easy for me by any means. But I felt like it was necessary.
Yeah, no, I and again, you have no real, I mean, even if your answer is, I just don't feel like doing it right now for you, that's what I need to hear is, that's good enough. I don't have an entitlement to people's time, to people's stuff. I ask them for what I want, and they get to say yes or no, and then it's my job to live with the answer and still treat them like a friend or a partner or a family member or whatever, because I don't get everybody.
When did you make that transition from, I really hate this MFer right now, to, I'll still treat him like a friend?
It was really quick. I was, I mean, for me, it was within, I'd say 90 to 120 seconds.
Yeah. I mean, I heard it on the phone. It wasn't like, we hung up and you were like, No, I already heard, I heard you. I figure it out on the phone.
I came to the conclusion pretty early, like, okay, this is the price of having friends that I care about. Sometimes I'm going to ask them for things and they're going to say no. And if I value the friendship more than the one thing I just asked for, then the way this works is I get okay with it as soon as possible and move on to the next topic.
So how did you go through that process of becoming okay with it? Like, I know it was quick, but what can you kind of replay and go back, like, how you arrived there? Because I think that's a challenge for a lot of people is, especially if you're so excited about something and then you don't get what you want. And I know as children, a lot of times we will kick and scream and yell and throw a tantrum until we get what we want. So how do you think you went through that process to get from one side to the other?
Yeah, the easiest thing was my brain just went into the mode of remembering something you're going to want from me soon and me getting to say no to you. No, just kidding. That's not it. That's definitely not it. That's
Wait. Well, all right. I'm gonna chalk this one up. Hold on a second. Let me take a little note. Put this on my calendar.
No, the real answer is
that kidney you asked for, Dan. Not gonna happen. Remember that time back in 2022 when you said no to me? Well, finally.
Yeah, that thought just got me all warm inside, so I was able to chill out. No, that was not it. I would say just the thought, just repeating to myself, you're not entitled to things that Dan has and or things or Dan's time or any of that. Like
what is your fair share of
well, exactly.
somebody
That's
else's?
the thing. Yes, exactly. I mean, seriously, I can't have, these values and these ideals about, the way the world's supposed to work and then not live them out when I'm given a great opportunity to live them out and then still feel good about myself. Like I don't get to put my head on the pillow with the attitude of everything Dan has is mine and I deserve it because I'm special, and then not expect other people to treat me that way. You know what I mean?
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
So that was the main thing. It's like just reminding myself, I am not entitled to everything I want just because I want it. I am not entitled to everything I want just because I want it. And I told myself a couple times in my head and took a deep breath and I was like, okay, let's move on.
That's great.
And yeah. I mean, that is a bit of a new exercise for me. That is not an exercise that I think I would have been capable of a year ago. I know I would not have been capable of a year ago.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I can't pretend like I'm serious about the stuff we talk about on this podcast and, just improving my life and my relationships. If when something difficult happens, I'm just able to say, well, screw it. I want what I want and I deserve it.
Yeah.
That's not how it works.
Yeah.
When you challenge yourself and you start winning, then you can feel like a winner. Before that, you don't get to feel like a winner. You don't get to feel like a winner just because you've adopted some new values and you think you see the world a different way. And the first time you get pushed, you're like, nope, screw all that. I'm going back to old Charles.
Yeah. And for me, I could see this being a little bit of a dance, because in my mind, I have a tendency to not ask for help or not ask for things.
Yeah.
And that might be a nice guy tendency, whatever that might be.
Right.
And because of that, I end up trying to do too much on my own, or I'm like, I'm going to have to do it on my own. So I'm just not going to do it at all.
Right.
Right. It's just too much work or whatever, And so I've done that a lot of times with, starting a couple of entrepreneurial ventures and businesses, and trying to do everything myself. And I needed to go to a program called Strategic Coach from Dan Sullivan, who really kind of reinforced the fact that in order for you to get, past that mindset of doing everything yourself, which a lot of entrepreneurs do because they're smart in one area. And so then what happens is they think they're able to do it, other things in other areas that they're not as good at, they're not as efficient at. And you end up then, spending the time that you are really good at one thing on things that you're not so good at, and you're not doing things that well. And you really need to kind of bring that back and go, look, in order for me to get to the next level, I need to trust other people. I need to be able to ask for help when I need it and be okay letting go of that control and allowing other people to do those things. And also having the humility to realize that, they can probably do it better than you can. And they have that, that life experience. And just the same way you have all of that experience in your one area of expertise, they have that, experience in that area of expertise, which you don't. So leverage that, and you're trading, money for that time and that experience. And being able to do that is sometimes, and it's been a challenge for me. And I know it's a challenge for you as well, because you're good at a lot of stuff and you're doing a lot of great stuff for this podcast. And I absolutely appreciate it. But sometimes I feel like I need to kind of twist your arm to say, okay, let's get a contractor to do some of this other work that is menial, like real basic stuff that, that, right. It's a compliment.
No, you're right. You're right.
You shouldn't be using your time and your talent doing those things. You should be, working, doing what we're doing here, right. Is bringing the goods.
And that's
the content.
The other weird thing about, you and I have not had a career or careers by any means that have been creative or artistic. We're engineers, right? And so the weird thing to think about is even the time you and I spend, quote unquote, resting or relaxing or just having fun, when the podcast is basically about our life and the things we believe and the ideas that we get excited about, every second of our day is show prep. And so every second that we're spending, trying to put together a document or trying to, transcribe our show notes or something like that, is not only taking time away from things we could concretely do to make the podcast better, it's taking time away from things that we could be doing that are fun, or things that we're doing that could be building our life experience.
Yeah.
And then making the product of the podcast less valuable than it could be, because again, we're wasting our time on inexpensive minutia that somebody else could do for us.
Yeah. And it's just a matter, it's almost like a meditation where you have to like realize that that's what we're doing. Cause it is fun in some respects. Like, when you design, logos and business cards, and you choose the colors and the fonts and stuff like that, that's fun stuff to do. But is that really, the best use of our time and stuff like that?
Right.
Sometimes you have to snap yourself out of it and go, wait a minute, whoa. Like this is, and then be able to let that go. And it's kind of like with the meditation where your brain goes, and then you have to kind of come back and catch yourself. Right.
I mean, we did it on our last episode when we were trying to figure out how to get higher video resolution. And like 19 minutes in, I had to say, okay, Dan, we're starting to delve into the land of the higher video resolution is not worth the time we're wasting that we're not recording.
I was in all the minutia in Zoom and all the little detailed, like check boxes and switches. And
I'm Googling, trying to find articles on it. You're trying to find settings. And finally I see my timer hits 19 minutes and I'm like, okay, we got to stop.
And you know what? I consider that a win. Only 19 minutes. I mean, in the past, I feel both of us, it would have been
I would have taken
19 hours. It would have been 19 hours. Easy. So we're getting better for sure.
Yeah, I think so. I think, and that's what it's all about, right? Is, one of my favorite Jordan Peterson quotes is like, if every day you can get just a little bit better, then 5 years from now, you're going to be exactly where you want to be.
Yeah.
And so, God willing. All right. You ready to jump into rule number 3 and see if we could talk about it better than we did last time?
100%.
100% is mine. You can't steal that.
Oh, that's right. Mine's 110%. That's right.
Although I was,
that's right.
Yeah, I was definitely impeding on your monopoly on last time a lot. So, it's funny. I always want to tell our audience that, hey, we tried to re-record this. We thought we could do better, but I'm always worried that at the end of the episode they're going to be like, "Oh, this is the good version." How bad must the last one have been?
I'm getting lightheaded from laughing so hard at that. That was great.
Okay, so this rule number 3 is make friends with people who want the best for you, and then it starts off with Jordan Peterson going into, I'm going to say, excruciating detail on what life was like in this cold, poor, little Western Canadian town out in the middle of nowhere, Fairview, Alberta, and it sounds so miserable, Dan. I would never be a big enough fanboy where I felt like I had to make a pilgrimage to the man's hometown.
Oh my God. Between the cats freezing to the stoops, and the teenage wasteland that he describes.
Yes. Now, if he was from Vancouver or Vegas, then maybe I'd be like, hey, let's go check out the Peterson house, because I'd want to go there anyway. But I have no interest in visiting Fairview, Alberta. It sounds like an absolute dump.
I don't know if that's the way to get him on the podcast, by the way. Just throwing that out there. Maybe Michaela, but I don't know about him. Well,
hey, he didn't. He didn't found the place. He just got born there. I'm sure he could take a joke. It sounds cold. It sounds poor. At least when he was there, I'm sure it's still cold. I don't know if it's still poor, but. Then he talks about some of his friends and the problems that his friends had, and it drags a little bit, man. I mean, and that's most of the chapter is him talking about that experience and just kind of the desperation and the nihilism and the, what are we supposed to do with our time? Let's try to fill it with whatever we can think of, and a lot of what they thought of was, just driving around and drinking and doing drugs, which, I mean, obviously I think in small amounts that can be fun, but this does not sound like small amounts.
Yeah. I think he's trying to reinforce his overall theme, which is that life is suffering, and that a lot of people come from a really rough upbringing, and then they create the tools to interpret life with that, with what they're usually with what they learn as a kid. And so now he makes the point of, you've got these broken tools for this looking at life. And so you may not be looking upward. You may not be wanting to move upward. You may be comfortable and not want to do better for yourself or for other people. And so now he's kind of identifying an issue that is pretty prevalent, I feel, in a lot of people. And he makes a point like we need to deal with it. And how do we deal with people who have these broken tools and don't want the best for themselves or don't want the best for you? And He kind of gives us permission to say we don't have a moral obligation to be around those people and to be friends with those people.
It's funny. I just saw a video on Instagram this morning of the actor and writer, Chaz Palminteri. He played, let's see. Have you seen The Usual Suspects?
Yes.
Okay. So he was like the main FBI agent that's interviewing Kevin Spacey throughout the whole movie, trying to piece together what happened at the docks.
Okay.
A very Italian looking fellow.
Yeah.
And he was also in the movie A Bronx Tale. Have you seen A Bronx Tale?
Yes. Yeah. I referenced that the other day, by the way.
That is the story. That is actually the story
in terms
of his life.
Unlocking my car door. If you remember that
nice.
Scene.
Yeah. That's great. So that's the story of his life. So the little boy in the movie is based on his life growing up in the Bronx. And so he wrote it for that reason.
Interesting.
And then in the movie, he plays like the head gangster that kind of runs the neighborhood. But yeah, he was doing an interview and a clip of it was on Instagram where he's basically saying he keeps negative people out of his life because positive people do not have the ability to pull up negative people, but the opposite is true. Negative people can always pull down positive people.
Yeah.
So he's like, I have to walk away from people sometimes because I know I have this impulse that I want to pick them up so that they can be up here with me where things are great. He's like, but I've lived long enough to realize that it doesn't work that way. All that can happen is they can bring me down.
Yeah. And Peterson makes a great point. It gives an example of a workplace where you have one rotten egg and a team of people working together. And, he says more often than not, that rotten egg starts bringing other people down. The good people do not bring them up. And I thought that was unique. And a lot of that I think goes to human nature, is that it's easier sometimes to do less, to take the low road, to just kind of wallow in negativity and allow your senses to be in this place of fear.
Yeah, I was thinking about that, and we talked about it a little bit on our last recording of this rule, where I've worked in environments in the technology space where I would sooner have a humble and curious rookie on my team than a highly proficient, cynical, sort of grisly guy who doesn't want to be there. And I mean, he can solve problems quickly, but he's a pain to work with. And I've been on teams exactly like that, where we had, a young, curious, humble guy who was willing to, listen and pick up whatever he could pick up from whoever he could pick it up from, or the old veteran who was really good at his job, but he was just, cynical and bitter and tough to be around. And I would almost say, give me a whole team of guys who don't know what they're doing but want to learn.
Yeah,
for
sure.
Over one guy who can get us solved quicker, but just dealing with them is a nightmare.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, people get set in their ways, and if they've been around for a while, the people without experience then look to this person who's been around for a while, who has this negative attitude, who's not doing great work, and they think, well, wait a minute, he's been around, forever. So this is the standard. This is the way things are. This is what reality actually is. I don't know. I only know a little bit because I'm just coming into the environment. Right. So, how am I going to excel? What is going to be the norm here?
Yeah. And, they could, in that position, you could get stuck with the idea of, oh, I guess cynicism and bitterness is part of the job. And then, once you do that for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, at a minimum, then you're going to go home and start thinking, oh, I guess the cynicism and the bitterness is part of life. And then, next thing you know, the clock strikes 44 years old and you realize I'm just a cynical, bitter person. And oof, what a hard realization to come to. And then you feel like maybe it's too late to do anything about it.
Yeah.
So, okay, there were a lot of good quotes, and I hesitate to read all of the things that I've highlighted because nobody wants to tune into a podcast to hear somebody reading a book. That's what audiobooks are for. So I try to limit myself to, no more than 4 lines at a time, because that's where I start tuning out. But I like this idea that sometimes when people have a low opinion of their own worth, or when they refuse responsibility for their lives, they choose a new acquaintance of precisely the type who proved troublesome in the past. So, like, yeah, if you don't feel like you deserve better and you're not willing to take the responsibility to do better, then the easiest thing in the world is, let me find somebody that has the same traits of somebody that I've had in the past. And that could be a friend or a romantic partner. And it's like, okay, these particular troublesome traits are comfortable for me. I know how to live with them. So let me just find somebody else that has them.
And it makes you feel validated in some way that maybe they're not as bad because this other person is dealing with these things too, or has these characteristics. So I have now shared company in these negative behaviors.
Yeah. One of the psychological phenomena that has always sort of confused me and fascinated me is the idea of, why do people repeat their traumas? Why do people seek out relationships and situations that were not good for them the first time, and they want to relive them again? And he references Freud, proposed 3 different reasons for why this happens. One is because they want to formulate those horrors more precisely, which I take to mean you want to relive it so that you can maybe try to understand it more. You came out of it the first time not completely understanding why it happened or how it happened. So if you put yourself through it again, you'll be able to get a deeper understanding, which ideally would then prepare you for being more successful when it happens in the future. Number 2 is to attempt more active mastery, which I take to mean you want to expose yourself to it so that you can take on a bigger role of surviving it in maybe a way. In the past, maybe it passively happened to you. Now you want to engage it more actively so that you can survive it through your own efforts and not just be the person that it happens to, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the third one is because you have no alternative. Like, you feel like, I have no other option other than to relive the same thing. And, I've known people in my own life, dear friends who I cared about, who were in abusive relationships, women whose, husband did a lot of things that it was completely inappropriate and wrong and brutal to them. And they finally got free of that relationship and found another man that hit them. And I think part of that can be just feeling like, I don't have any other choice. This is just the lot in life that I deserve, or that I'm worth, or whatever. And they just felt like they didn't have any other option. And right. It was sad to watch.
Absolutely. And this is a great point that Peterson makes in this chapter about why it's so important to set boundaries and keep them with people who are not good for you.
Yeah.
And basically by saying, I'm no longer going to, associate with you. I'm not going to be your friend. I'm not going to support you in doing this. You are setting an example, right? You are setting an example for somebody who may think, in this case, like the women you're talking about, they may not have had another example. So they think that's the only option. Right. But if you are taking care of yourself, and basically, like rule 2, right, you're treating yourself like somebody that you care for, right?
Yeah.
You are taking care of yourself, and by setting those boundaries, you're just giving them a good example as, hey, there is another option here. There are things that I could be in, and you're now and you are not going to set that example if you placate and you give in to the alcoholism, or you say it's okay for this, for a woman to stay with someone who's abusing them because they claim that they love them, or whatever that is. And so that's a reason why it's okay to let go of people who aren't good for you, because you're actually doing them a favor by showing them you are an example.
Yeah, not only okay, but essential to be
Right.
willing. And that's the thing. If you have a relationship where you set a boundary of unacceptable behavior and that person goes away, as much as it hurts, that's the way the boundary's supposed to work. I mean, that's how they're supposed to work. You set a boundary and you hold the boundary. I mean, if you refuse the favor I asked for the other day and I decided to never speak to you again, that would have been a painful but successful outcome for you.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. It would have been painful, but
You would have been better off if that's what happened. You would have been better off for it than having me hang out in your life, continually trying to rub up against those boundaries and explain to you how entitled I am to anything that you have that I want.
Right.
What kind of friendship would that have been? We would not have been making each other better for the rest of our lives.
No. And
I've had that kind of relationship with people before. I've been the bad guy that's tried to do that, and it ends painfully and it ends prematurely.
Yeah. And for me, from my perspective is, if you're willing to throw out your friendship just because I say no, then were we really friends?
Exactly.
Are you're judging everything else that we have in common in all of our past experiences and things that, bonded us together and stuff. All that just goes to the wayside because you don't get one little thing that you asked for. Yeah. Then it's almost like shameful on me because I didn't recognize that you are that kind of person earlier. Like, It's like, oh my gosh, what did I miss?
Right.
All these years, I should have seen signs of that, maybe the way you were treating other people or talking about things. So to me, that means now I need to work on myself because it's like, wow, I probably missed some signals here.
Yeah,
I spent all my time with this one person. I invested my time and energy in this friendship with somebody who's willing to throw it away for one little thing, isn't resilient. Wow. Right. I need to, as you call it, like I need a better picker. I need to choose people more wisely to spend my time and energy with.
And I can't think of a time where I have, written off a multi-year friendship over one favor, but but I can't deny that those tendencies are still inside me. I think the older I've gotten and the more therapy I've had, and honestly, the more traumatic stuff that I've put myself through, the less likely I am to just lash out and say, okay, you weren't the resource farm that I thought you were, and you refused me once, and now I don't need you anymore. Yeah, that I've got to be honest with myself that is something that lives inside of me. And, we've talked multiple episodes about the daily routine I need to stay healthy and sane, and the journaling, the meditation, the going for walks, the working my body out. It definitely helps keep those impulses at bay. But yeah, I am a guy that those things live inside of. And you could say, oh well, all humans have that side of them, but man, I've had a front row seat to see those impulses ruin things before, and it's a bummer.
And they can, and it's a challenge to think of especially when you're in that moment, you're feeling those strong emotions, to think of all of the other positive things that other person has brought to your life and potentially could bring to your life down the road, right? So it's again, baby with the bathwater. Are we getting rid of what could be overall benefit for a small inconvenience or small, and it may not. I mean, for on the other side of things, if it could be a bigger deal. So it takes some time and meditation on the person, on the relationship, and to kind of stay conscious and stay mindful of the relationship that you have with that person, the relationship you have with yourself, what your own needs are. A lot of time and energy spent, thinking about all these things and keeping them in front of mind so that you make the best decisions.
Yeah, it should be. And the other thing is, handling no's is a very important part of building a better relationship. The more gracefully you can handle someone telling you no, then the more likely you are to get a yes down the road. And that's something that's a conversation I've had with some younger men in my life, where they went through a bad breakup and they wanted their girlfriend back, but the way they handled themselves at the breakup, they put so much extra misery and trauma on their ex-girlfriend, from things like, constantly begging, constantly trying to talk them out of the breakup and things like that, I was like, man, why would she ever take you back when she already knows how bad it gets when she breaks up with you? Like, you've already given her a front row seat on how badly you've handled this experiment.
Yeah.
And so why would she ever consider giving you a second chance when she knows exactly how it goes down when you guys split?
Yeah.
And I've probably been guilty of it myself. I mean, I had a breakup about 7 months ago, and I tried to handle it in the healthiest way for both of us that I could, but I'm sure I fell short of that goal on multiple occasions.
I mean, yeah, you can, it sounds a little bit simple here, but if you were to walk into, let's say, a movie theater and you knew it was going to be difficult to leave, you couldn't find the exit,
yes.
Right?
Yes.
Are you likely to go in, or in any kind of venue where it's just like and I mean, think about it. We do this when we go to like sporting events or concerts or whatever. A lot of times we're like, okay, in terms of even parking, right? Well, I want to make it easy as possible to get out of here, right? So I'm going to park towards the end, or let's leave before the finale or is done. Let's start walking out of here so we're not caught on a staircase or whatever forever, right? Because it's a lot easier to get out, and so you're a lot more likely to go knowing it's easier to get out, and you're not going to be putting yourself in a difficult situation. And
you're absolutely right.
Yeah, the same can be said for relationships, and that includes friendships too.
No, I was about to tie it back to. I was about to tie it back to. I mean, if you saying no to me resulted in 3, 4, 7 days of me just being a prick who was hard to deal with, and I constantly had an attitude and started giving you just one word answers to everything we talked about, you're in the back of your mind would be like, okay, we finally got over that, a week or two down the road, but the back of your mind would be like, God, I hope he doesn't ask me for another favor, because either I'm going to have to say yes to something I don't want to say yes to, or I'm going to have to deal with the nonsense of him being sullen and angry and frustrated for a week.
Yeah. And now, in that example is I wouldn't be able to tell you, I would be less likely to want to tell you my truth, which is difficult enough as it is. But knowing that you would have such a horrible reaction to it, I'm a lot less likely to do it. And now I'm being somebody, I feel pressure to be something that I'm not, and I can't be myself.
Right. And that is not a
that's not a recipe
and you don't put your
success.
Friends,
no.
You don't put your friends in that position where
hopefully you don't put anybody in that position, but
true. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Where they don't feel like they can be honest. Cause I've had experiences like that before where I tried to make plans to do something with a friend, and basically they made up an excuse for why they couldn't do it when the actual answer was, I don't feel like doing it.
Yeah.
But because of how I treated them before, they felt like being honest with me and just saying, nah, I'm not into it wasn't an option for them. So they had to come up with an excuse because they wanted to manage my feelings and manage my reaction, because they weren't pleased with the reaction that I gave them in the past. And thankfully this was, a long time ago when I was like late teens, early 20s that I remember this happening. But, part of me wants to say, well, that's their fault. They shouldn't lie to me. But it's like, no, every relationship you have with every person is a relationship that the two of you created together.
Yeah.
And so while, yes, I'm not going to give somebody a pass for lying to me and giving me an excuse just because they didn't want to either hang out with me or do that particular activity. It's like, no, I trained them to think that lying to me and giving me an excuse was safer for them than just being honest. And I got to take on some of that responsibility too. Dan, so I'm reminded of, you and I have talked about before, a little bit of your background of feeling anxiety toward the end of the evening. And it's funny, me and our friend Richard, we're kind of known for what is colloquially referred to as the Irish exit or Irish goodbye, where me and Richard will just disappear. Like, we're having fun, we're having a good time, and then Richard or I will just be like, where'd Charles go? Where'd Richard go? We just left.
Right.
And I've never known you to do that. I've never I mean, you make the rounds like you're like a politician, shaking hands and kissing babies, both when you arrive and when you leave. And I know you've expressed that being the result of some anxiety. So give us a little background on what that's like for you.
Yeah. So I picked up that habit growing up with a European family, I guess, in spending some time in Germany in the summers. My grandmother and uncle and a lot of family are from there. And as a little kid, we had to greet everybody whenever somebody new came, whether it was somebody that we knew or we didn't. We had to greet them, and then at the end of the night, before going to bed, we needed to say goodnight to everybody, kiss relatives on the cheek, and go to bed. And it was just a very formal type of, and that's just the way we function.
So what did that look like? Like if you all were sitting in the dining room or the living room and you're having a conversation and stuff and then somebody comes in, like literally the conversation stops and everybody just gets up and receives them, shakes their hand, gives them a hug. I mean, was it like that?
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. That's not an image that I would necessarily associate with German culture. I didn't know that was a thing, because based on media and multiple world wars, I just have this image of Germany being a little bit more business-like than that. I didn't realize that that's what the family interactions are like.
The interesting thing is, they are very serious when it comes to business, but it's like they flip a switch. And so when it's time for business, they are serious. They take their job seriously. They, and they pay attention to details. But then when business is over, when it's closing time, it's very warm, and it's very much like most other European countries, like Italy. You think of a lot of warmth, right, from Italians and stuff like that.
Italy and Spain are the ones that popped into my head thinking about that culture.
When it is not business time, Germany is the same way. Very much so. And you think of, you're going to stereotype here a little bit with Oompa bands and Oktoberfest and them drinking and things like that and celebrating, and it's warm and loving. There really is a warm and loving side to Germans, at least the ones that my family and the culture. And
isn't that weird how in America it's just we blur that line between business and personal time so much, where most of the time you're at work, but you're kind of acting like you're hanging out with your friends and you're being social, like especially if you've been in a job for a long time, right?
Yeah.
But then also, when you're at home, and I mean, at least in my case, I get a work text, I get a work email, even if I'm on family time, friend time, there's something in me that says, oh no, I've got to switch to, yes, I'm on my time, but this thing needs to get done. So I either have to put it off and worry about it until I'm back in the office, or I just take care of it now, and then I can switch back to being with my friends and family. Mm-hmm. So it's weird how it seems like America, we just have that kind of wave where we go from work to home to work to home, where what you're describing is Europeans have a lot more of a line. It's like, I'm at work or I'm at home.
Well, I don't want to say Europeans, because my experience is really with Germans, because I worked over there. I grew up over there. So my experience in the offices and corporate, whatever, Germans have is very much that way. Italians, not so much. I've worked with some Italians and stuff like that. That is very much similar to what you just said. There isn't much, they're warm and friendly all the time, even during work. But because of that, I feel like, sometimes work doesn't get done quite as quickly or as efficiently.
How dare you?
As it could be, could be, because there might be a little bit extra wine or vino at lunch or during the day.
Sounds amazing.
And and then the lunch is a little bit longer and they're a little bit more full. And again, I'm stereotyping. I understand that it's not everybody, but that's been my experience. So
it's okay. You're still, I'm giving you you're allowed to stereotype Italians. I'm 50%. So I'm giving you the permission,
the pass. So
yes, exactly.
And I'm 50% German, so I can stereotype them all day long. Anyway.
So let's transition that. So imagine having that mindset of everybody has to be greeted. Everybody has to, have goodbye said to them. You stop whatever you're doing to do that. Now transition that to a college social experience where you've got house parties where you're going from place to place, or you're doing bar crawls where you're going from bar to bar. That seems like it would add a lot of management overhead and stress to that situation.
You'd
Or
think.
it
You'd
could if you
think.
let it.
You'd think, but I grew up that way, so it
Yeah.
didn't. And it was
Okay.
nice because a lot of times I was going out, most of the time I was going out with people that I liked and that I wanted to see and I hadn't seen in a while. So it was nice to be able to, just see their face, shake their hand, kiss them on the cheek, whatever that is.
Right. But
And
what about when
yeah.
what about when your battery starts running low and your introvert tendencies start coming out? I mean, sometimes
So
I mean
here's
don't
the thing.
and factor in the extrovert who's probably drunk and probably wants the night to go on forever, who doesn't want to shake your hand and kiss you goodbye, doesn't want to say, okay, well, Dan's done for the night.
Right. So, right. So yeah, the people, so yeah, what I ended up, this is what happened. So
okay.
I came in with this, and I still have this habit of greeting everybody and saying goodbye to everybody. But what would happen was a lot of people that I was friends with, and yeah, they had a couple of drinks or a couple too many drinks and would get a little bit upset if I was leaving before they did, or before the bar closed, or before the party was over. And it wasn't just with me. I mean, they did this with other people as well.
What did that upset look like? Was it just peer pressure? Was it them getting an attitude? I mean, how did they express that to you?
Yes.
Okay. So they would get an attitude like, what the hell, Dan? Like that kind of thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes it would be, they try to embarrass you into staying, humiliate you, or again, not everybody and not all the time, but every once in a while that would happen, and it would just, or find ways to guilt you into wanting to stay. And, not caring that you want something, right? So they're, and basically, and they don't have a good need. They don't have a good reason. It's even weaker because they didn't have a really good reason why they wanted me to stay. So for example, some people, they may have been there the whole time, but not made any effort to come and talk to me or have a conversation with me. And like, I'm leaving. And so they didn't really care if I was there or not sometimes.
But then when it's time for you to leave, they're like, but we didn't even get to hang out.
Right. Right. And meanwhile, we both had been there 4 hours or something. Right.
Exactly.
And so,
yes, so I have seen that guy before. Absolutely.
Yeah. So then what happened was I started to, as I got older, I just started to leave and not say goodbye to anybody. Now what was interesting was then I started to kind of figure out, who's a little bit more on the same page in terms of not wanting to close out the bar or the place. Right. And, some of those people, I'd be like, hey man, I'm taking off, and so then, you kind of realize who you can say goodbye to and who you can't. Because if you do, then now all of a sudden there's a problem. And then I start to get a little bit more resentful towards them because, why are you trying to make me feel bad for something that is very innocent, really? And it's like, so yeah, but that kind of, it helps you kind of filter out, people that you should hang out with and people that are really not great to hang out with. And it kind of goes back to that, not throwing the baby out with the bathwater and seeing what, are the other aspects of that friendship worth, made to feel guilty for leaving a little bit early, things like that.
Right. And I guess the takeaway from this there's a couple takeaways that I see. One is the only cure for building up resentment in relationships is have boundaries and hold them. Because if you have boundaries and you don't hold them, then that builds up the resentment faster than not having them at all. I had an experience once at work where one of the managers decided, okay, I'm going to do a survey to ask all the employees what they like and what they don't like and what's difficult and, about the corporate environment here. And she asked me for my assistance putting that survey together. And the word of warning that I gave her was, do not do this survey if you're not willing to change anything that comes back negative. If the whole team or half the team says, here's the thing that I hate about working here, and you ask the question and then you don't do anything to remediate that issue, it's going to be worse than if you never took the survey in the first place.
Yeah. That's great.
And so rule number one or takeaway number one is state your boundary and hold your boundary. Otherwise, you're going to be resentful of people that you're supposed to be friends with. Number two is don't be the person that guys like Dan and your other friends, now that you know that it's possible your friends are doing some sort of a equation before they decide whether to say yes to hanging out with you based on how difficult you make it to hang out with you, just don't be the guy that puts your friends in the position where they have to think like, Charles is fun to hang out with, but I know at the end of the night, I'm going to be tired. I'm going to want to go home and he's going to try to make me feel guilty about leaving early. Like,
Right.
just don't be that guy.
Yeah.
You'll have more fun when you're out. You'll get people say yes to hanging out with you more than they say no. And the time that you're together, you'll know that that person's hanging out with you because they want to hang out with you, not because it's countdown to guilt trip.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I have some friends who they just want people around. It doesn't, they don't necessarily engage with them one-on-one, but they want, when they go out, they just want, like a crowd, of people that they can, buy a drink for or whatever. But, there's no real, conversation that happens there. And, look, that's fine. That's their choice. And, it's up to me to maintain my own boundaries. And it's interesting, as you're talking about this, I just thought about this, these mental and emotional, boundaries that we set for ourselves, they are so critical, because without them, then the people around us don't know who you are. Because then, just like with this book, right? There's a physical boundary, right? We know this is a book because there are boundaries here. There are physical boundaries here. The same holds true for you and your personality and what you're going to tolerate, what you're going to put up with. Is you need to be able to have those and present them to other people so they can see them, but then you also need to force them and hold them up so that they know where they are. Just like a 2-year-old is going to test boundaries with their parents to see what they can get away with. Sometimes friends and other people are going to do that with you, and you need to have them up so that they understand, okay, this is who Charles is, right? This, he's it's not somebody that you made to feel guilty about sticking around, right? When he wants to leave, you support him. And I know we go out a lot, and whenever when you want to leave, I try not, I know I have a tendency sometimes to try to get you to stay a little bit. I do recognize that, but for the most part, I try to honor and respect how you're feeling about those things. And because I know that's what I would want you to do for me.
Yes. And for us, I mean, and sometimes, like last night, the plan was, I wasn't sure how much fun I was going to have at what our original St. Patrick's Day plans were. So I suggested, hey, let's drive separately, because that way, if I wasn't having a good time, it's up to me. I wouldn't have to deal with the guilt of saying, okay, my lack of a good time now has to end Dan's night too. And, that's one easy way to do it is, drive separate, so that if you decide enough's enough.
Yeah.
If you ever wanted to end the night early, I mean, I think I've established, if you ever want to end the night early, I'm never going to be the one to say, no, let's stay out longer, Dan. I'm always like, God, I wanted to leave 20 minutes ago.
That's interesting, because I remember, going through, college and afterwards, that I would have offers people to drive me places. Yeah. And that's exactly what through my head is like, no, this person's going to want to stay all night long, and I'm going to want to have that flexibility to leave when I want to. So it's an inconvenience for me to drive on my own, but I need that, I want that flexibility, because I knew that person had already given me grief about leaving early on certain things. So I know what the tendency is. Now, again, this isn't, for all my friends from college that might actually listen to this podcast, I love you all. And, you may not be that way, or you may not be that much, and it certainly didn't ruin my life by any means. But it's a factor in how I end up engaging with them.
Right. The big message, everybody, to all of Dan's friends, the message is, he's not talking about you. He's talking about that other guy. And I think we all know who he means.
It's great.
It's definitely not you.
Yeah,
it's that other guy.
Yeah.
The other thing that occurred to me while you were talking about, maintaining your own internal boundaries so that people can have a solid handle on who you are and what you're about. That, I mean, obviously that's a great principle for people in general, but holy cow, especially for men. I mean, part of our job, whether we like it or not, in our romantic relationships and our friendships, and you can argue about whether this is because the way God made us or because the way evolution has selected us, part of our responsibility is to provide safety, security, and consistency for the people in our lives. And that is a burden that you can deny at your own peril, because when you are not able and again, I'll focus specifically on romantic relationships with women. If you're not able to provide that safety and security and consistency in your relationships, the traditional feminine woman that you and I are both attracted to and enjoy spending time with, they require that. And if you do not provide that for them, your days are numbered.
Yeah.
And so the only way you can provide that is to do the deep internal work that it takes to get to that state where you're able to provide that. And you could look at, I'm there. I came out of childhood with beliefs and tendencies and habits that make that not as natural as I wish it was. And there are times when I have to say no to myself in order to be able to provide that for the people that I care about. And, you know, it sucks. It'd be great if it was natural. It'd be great if it was natural 100% of the time, but it's not natural, but it is worth it. And so that is absolutely something you've got to learn to be able to provide for the people in your life, especially the women and children.
Yeah.
That's what they're looking for from you.
Yeah. So, and because that's not what they, you know, again, if we're going to go back to, you know, specialty and experience and, you know, having the tools in the toolkit to do certain things, typically, you know, we're generalizing here, you know, men, that's what they have. That's their experience. And that's basically the you know, the tools in their toolkit to do those things. And women and children, not quite to that degree. Can they do it? Yes. Are they going to be, you know, as good as men? Sometimes they will be, but I think more often than not, they want to, like you said, is, you know, express what they're good at, what they enjoy, that, you know, live in their femininity, and also children, you know, live in a little bit of that innocence. Right. And in order to do that, you have to provide something, you have to provide that protection and that safety and that shelter.
And I think talking about this gives us, you know, and I'm okay to close with this. I don't have anything else from this chapter. I know we didn't stay exactly on topic the whole time, but I think we had some interesting things to share. This does give me the opportunity to sort of reiterate and offer some context about what this podcast is about, which is you and me have a limited experience of dealing with each other and with other men of a certain kind and with women of a certain kind. And we're not saying that's all that's out there and that's all that is worth exploring or worth getting into. Right. But it's what we know. And all we can talk about with any kind of intelligence or experience is what we've learned from the lives that we've had. And so, you know, look, if you're not into the same kind of women that we are, if you don't see yourself as the same kind of man that we're trying to be, that's okay. And that's not worth any less than the experiences that Dan and I share and talk about. Hopefully, you know, enough of what we talk about is the human experience that you can get something out of what we're talking about and feel included in the kinds of experiences that we've had. But again, we're just like anybody. We're limited to the kinds of lives that we've either inherited or been given or chosen for ourselves. And that's not going to translate to absolutely everybody in every circumstance. And that's not because we don't care that people have different experiences than us. It's just we know what we know and we don't know what we don't know.
Right. And you know, again, we're not doctors, we're not mental health professionals.
No, we certainly are not.
We have no, you know, very little experience in that and seeing like lots of people and being able to draw on lots of different experiences. It's, as you said, Charles, it's our own experience and from living our lives that we're drawing from and sharing from, and hopefully you can take away some nuggets of information that might be helpful. And I do have something I wanted to touch on here, which might be a nice transition here. One part about the chapter that Peterson talks about, which is a lot of times people will stay in relationships with unhealthy people because they've got a tendency to want to fix or change the other person. And it also makes them feel good. So, you know, for example, you know, by sticking in a relationship with, you know, a horrible, somebody who's got really bad alcoholism, you know, your binge drinking every weekend doesn't look so bad. So now you feel a little bit better about yourself.
That's true.
And you feel, and maybe if you can fix them, you feel like you are a good person. And he makes a couple of points. One, when he was, I think he still is practicing clinical psychologist, that, you know, a lot of times the people who were court ordered to see him for therapy, for drug addiction or whatever, who didn't want to change, who didn't want to be there. It never worked. But, you need to do that on your own. So you're not going to be able to change somebody who doesn't want to change. The other thing he talks about is that, by wanting to fix people, a lot of times, I know I've been guilty of this, is, getting into, romantic relationships with women who might need fixing. Right. And so that's something to think about as well, as, maybe you feel like you can be that hero and almost assume that masculine role by being able to fix somebody. And that doesn't ever work out either.
Right.
If somebody asks for help, I'm more than excited to support them, in any way, but that is really a big difference versus somebody who you think should be fixed. And, may not be aware of it, but like, oh, I can change her, or, I can help her overcome this. And, it's you want, and maybe, you see all these other wonderful things about that person. You go, oh, I really, I care about them so much in all these other areas. And, she's struggling with this, but, so if I fix this, then, she'll be perfect. Or she'll be exactly what I want her to be. And those are things to just be aware of, that I think a lot of us have a tendency to think about, or to not realize that we may be doing that.
Yeah. And the thing with, every relationship that is based on one person's need to rescue the other person ultimately is a relationship based on hubris and condescension. And you will never be able to escape that. If you go in thinking, I'm better than this person, I can make this person good like me, then number one, you're probably overvaluing how good you actually are. The fact that you have that impulse in the first place goes a long way to say you're not where you need to be. And number two, you're always going to be in this position of faux dominance over this other person that you see as a charity case, or a DIY project, and where you're trying to get them up to your level. And the level you're trying to get them up to is not even the level that you are actually at. It's where you think you're at, and where you feel good believing that you're at, but not where you actually are.
And here's the thing. Unless you're like a mental health professional, do you even have the skill set to do that with somebody?
No, and that's the thing. A good mental health professional would realize that they don't. So and whenever you feel like you have the ability to take a broken person and make them whole, all that does is speak to how broken you actually are, not anything about them. And
even people who study this for years and years and years and work as mental health professionals can't change people who don't want to change. So to think that you could do this without that training, right? Talk about hubris, right? It's like crazy.
Yes.
Holy cow.
Your love that you have for this person is not as special or as powerful as you think it is, if your end goal is to take them from being broken to make them whole. If that's what your goal is with them, even if that's not a goal that you're willing to admit to them or yourself, but deep down that's what you're trying to do, then no, your special romantic love that you have, that's not what it's for, and that's not what it's going to be able to do. In fact, it's going to just make both of you miserable. And it's relationships only work between two people that are whole and healthy, and decide that they both bought into the idea that they can create something unique between the two of them that they couldn't have on their own, but not that they were incomplete and broken. And if they're the whole idea of, oh, we're two halves of a whole that found each other. It's like, no, you got to be two wholes that found each other that can make something slightly better than what you could do individually. And if that's not your attitude, you're setting yourself up for disappointment. And I've done this before. I'm not saying this from the position of,
I have too.
I would never make this mistake. It's like, no, I've tried this. I failed at it. And God willing, I don't make that mistake again. But, again, we talk about the tendencies that live inside me. Without vigilance, then the default settings are going to rule the day,
Yeah. So that was great, Charles. I just wanted to make that last point there. I think.
No, I appreciate it.
Thanks for sharing that.
No, thank you. And okay, so let's call it right now, and we will rush to edit this episode and get it out bright and early Monday morning. And I hope everybody appreciates the effort that we put in to making it at least a little bit better than the first version that we found not good enough to share with you guys.
No, this one was awesome. All right, man.
All right. Well, thanks, Dan. I appreciate your endorsement.
All right. I'll talk to you later.
All right.
What? Go ahead.
I was going to say, what was I think the last one that we did that I really liked was Rule 8. So that'll be coming, in a week or two. And I really like the way that one went. I'm really happy with that episode. So hopefully everybody, it gives them something to look forward to, where this was good too. And I think we've got some good stuff coming, but I was very happy with Rule 8, which was, let me read the title real quick. Oh yeah, tell the truth or at least don't lie. I was very happy with the way that one came out, so I'm excited to put that one out there for everybody. All right, thanks, Dan. Have a good one. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks so much for spending time with us on the Mindfully Masculine podcast. If you liked the episode, or you think it would be useful for someone else, please leave us a review and join the Mindfully Masculine group on Facebook. Remember, fellas, don't act masculine, be masculine.